Welcome back to the show. Today we're diving deep into day six of the Madlanga Commission, arguably one of the most pivotal sessions so far. The testimony we heard today from General Van Rooyen doesn't just stand on its own. It weaves directly into the stories told by Generals Masimola and Mkhwanazi in earlier days. And when you line them up together, a very clear picture starts to emerge. A picture of a minister who went beyond his legal powers, a senior police officer who bypassed his chain of command, and an institution caught in the middle of unlawful instructions that risked the integrity of policing itself. The most striking feature of General Van Rooyen's testimony was how she gave legal framing to what others had only implied before her, where General Mkhwanazi had been direct and blunt, saying that the minister Senzo Mchunu issued an illegal instruction to disband the KZN political killings task team, and where General Masimula had been more tentative, resisting, and refusing to carry it out. General Van Rooyen added the crucial legal spine. She stated clearly and firmly that the Minister of Police had no authority to directly instruct the disbandment of a task team. That power lies squarely with the National Commissioner, who is charged under the Constitution with operational command and control. In other words, Mkhunu didn't just overstep, he broke the law. This matters because the KZN political killings task team was not some minor unit, or is not some minor unit, because as we know from General Masimula's testimony, he didn't disband it. It was formed in a response to the crisis of political assassinations in KZN. And KZN, as we know, is a province haunted by hitmen, contract killings, and politically linked violence. The team had been one of the most successful in addressing those crimes, and yet, despite its mandate, despite its success, and despite the lives depending on its work, Mkhunu issued a direct order to dissolve it. Unilaterally. Unilaterally. Now, the interesting part about this is that he didn't seek the, not permission, but rather the consultation of the IMC, the Interministerial Committee. He didn't seek consultation of that team. But it came out in previous testimony that he spoke to the president, or the president had rather spoken to him about it after a complaint from General Masimola. Can we classify that as consultation? I think not. I think it's collusion. I think we can classify that as collusion between him and the president, but I digress. Now, Mkhwanazi, in his earlier testimony, gave us the first glimpse into how that played out. He told the commission that the instruction was both shocking and deeply troubling, especially given the climate in KZN at the time. His testimony framed Mkhunu's move as not just misguided, but as potentially enabling criminality by weakening the police's capacity to investigate political killings. He described the moment as one where a minister, instead of safeguarding law and order, appeared to undermine it. And let's not forget what General Masimola referred to yesterday, or stated yesterday, that he could not understand how a minister could be angry at police doing their job. Let that sink in for a moment. Now, Masimola, on the other hand, his evidence added a different dimension to Mkhwanazi's. His strength was in showing resistance. When the order came down, he refused to act on it. He did not authorize the disbandment. He effectively put himself between the minister's unlawful demand and the functioning of the police. But his refusal only created an opening for another figure to step in, and that's where Shadrach Sibia enters the story. Now, Sibia, then serving in a senior role, became the conduit for the minister's will. Instead of respecting the National Commissioner's authority, instead of respecting the constitutional line of command, Sibia took it upon himself to carry out Mkunu's unlawful instruction. And let's be clear, this was not just bending the rules, it was gross insubordination. It was the deliberate bypassing of the head of the police service in order to align himself with a political boss. In the language of organizational discipline, this wasn't a gray area, it was black and white. And Sibia went behind Masamola's back and acted in a way that undermined the very chain of command he was sworn to uphold. That's why General van Rooyen's testimony today mattered so much. She didn't just repeat what we'd already heard, she anchored it in law. She drew the commission back to the basics. Who has the power to do what and under what authority? She underlined that the minister is a political executive, not an operational commander. And in doing so, she gave the Commission a clear standard against which to measure both Mkhunu and Sibiya's actions. The way she delivered her evidence also stood out for me. She was calm, measured, with the authority of a person um, who knows the law inside out. She knew what she was talking about. She didn't need to dramatize what had happened. The facts themselves were damning enough. By spelling out that Mkunu's instruction was not only irregular, but flatly unlawful, she e- stripped away any excuses that he might come up with as a reasoning for his actions. The minister cannot claim ignorance. He cannot claim misunderstanding. He knowingly crossed a line he had no right to cross. Taken together, the three generals' testimonies now form a cohesive arc. Mkwanazi was the whistleblower, the one who said out loud what others had only whispered. Masimola was the resistor, the one who refused to legitimize an illegal act. And Van Rooyen was the legal authority, the one who codified the wrongness of it all. And then hovering in the background, we have Sibiya, the officer who chose loyalty to a minister over loyalty to the institution or the constitution. When you trace the sequence chronologically, the betrayal becomes even clearer. First, Mkunu issues the instruction. Next, Masemola refuses to implement. Then in steps Sibiya, bypassing his superior and undermining the chain of command. And now, on day 6 of the commission, Van Rooyen confirms beyond doubt that the entire chain of events was rooted in illegality. Can you guys see how toxic this work environment is? Man, it is worth pausing to ask why Mkhunu wanted the task team disbanded in the first place. We can infer, but was it a matter of cost, efficiency, or was there something more sinister at play? An interest in weakening the state's ability to investigate political crimes. I think I choose that one. I think that is the reason that should be looked into. The commission doesn't have all the answers yet, but Van Rooyen's testimony ensures that One answer is already on the record. Whatever his motives, the way he went about it was unlawful. That much is clear. This commission has now reached a stage where the dots are beginning to connect. We're no longer dealing with isolated testimonies, each floating in its own silo. Instead, we're seeing corroboration, we're seeing overlap, and crucially, we're seeing consistency between the testimonies of senior generals who might not always agree with each other. But when Massimo Lamquanas and Van Rooyen line up at the same point, that the minister overreached and Sibiya acted improperly, it becomes very difficult for the commission to dismiss. What today has also done is shift the focus firmly onto accountability. The Madlanga Commission is not a criminal court, but its findings will carry enormous political and institutional weight. If it concludes that the minister acted unlawfully, that is not a matter that can be swept under the carpet. If it concludes that Sibiya was grossly insubordinate, that raises serious questions about discipline, loyalty, and the politicization of policing. The stakes in this case could not be higher. This is not just about a task team in one province, it's about the principle of whether ministers can bend the police to their will and whether senior officers are willing to betray their oath in order to serve political interests. And today, thanks to General Van Rooyen, we now have the legal vocabulary to describe what happened: unlawful instruction, lack of authority, insubordination. Yeah, we already knew those, but she cemented it into the process. As we close out day six, one thing is clear: the commission is no longer just about allegations, it is about proof, corroboration, and legal clarity. Mkwanazi rang the alarm bell, Masimola stood his ground, and Van Rooyen handed the commission the framework to judge them all by. At the center of it all is a minister who overreached and an officer who enabled him. Now, whether they are ready to face the consequences of this truth is the question that remains. As always, like, subscribe, comment, do what you will. We'll see each other again at the end of day seven. Thank you for listening.